All right. Thank you for coming back. It's great to talk with you again. So glad you're here with me. Paul Stone, The Crux with Paul Stone. And did recently write a book. Recently just came out, I should say, a couple weeks ago. It's doing really, really well on Amazon. And that's not what I want to talk about today, but just to give myself a little credibility. I've written a book. It actually does explain exactly the driver for what I want to cover today. 1971, you can get it on Amazon. Everything has a source to it, right? So I just see, from my viewpoint, could be wrong, but I think it's worth everyone checking out. And I'll say this too, someone's first suggestion, or maybe anything that just breaks with what everyone's thinking or doing, doesn't necessarily need to be right. It's just that pattern interrupt that causes us to start opening up and taking a new and fresh perspective on something. Because if we're just, I will say this now, 27 years today for me, where I've been living a very different way of life. 27 years today, if you know what I mean, that anonymous thing. That if I'm just facing resistance, I might be heading the wrong direction. Now, we'll check that again later. Hopefully I'll remember and not forget. Where that resistance confirms you're headed in the right direction. So the source of everything matters. Absolutely matters. You know, it's like sometimes you go to a fancy restaurant, they're not sourcing, the meal plan from, a big box store. I don't want to put anyone down. I remember there's a pizza joint in my hometown, and my son and I would go there, and, the guy would come out and tell us in detail the painful journey that the cheese made from some small town in Italy to a port to New York and then down to his pizza parlor. And it was, extraordinary mozzarella. And the source of that mattered because it's what he used and the work he did to find this little cheese maker that would set his pizza parlor off and make it unique from others. So I love going, and I think it's absolutely essential if you're going to solve a problem, chart a course, anything at all, you've got to focus on the source of things. And, it breaks my heart that what I want to talk about today is happening. It's needlessly happening. But 94% of Gen Zers, which, if I've got this right, is essentially 14 to 28-year-olds, that age zone. 94% of Gen Zers are reporting, claiming, struggling, saying that they have some challenges to their mental health. And that's okay that you say that. That's okay. I'm glad that it seems to be an honest poll. That fits with what I would guess, because I've studied the hell out of what is the source of causing the distress, the anger, the unsettledness, the insecurities, fear of the future's unknown, the anxiety. And this isn't, Paul Stone's therapy session. Just see if any of this makes sense. And at least, if anything, you'll hear that I have deep empathy for all of you, any of you, whatever your age is today. Your grandparents of Gen Z might be stressed out. The parents are probably stressed out, right? So there's an old saying, I just have empathy for all of you. If that's all you get out of this today, just know that this one, he gets it, I get it, I've lived it. I probably spent more than half of my life regretting being here. I struggled frickin' mightily with finding peace here. So I get it. There's a saying, if you're a parent, that you can be about as happy as your most unhappy kid. And, my son has been going through stuff that I inadvertently caused, the way I reacted to things. And it was never physical. It was never yelling. But pressures or expectations I put on him, or, if he got hurt, telling him to rub some dirt on it and let's keep going. And maybe I was insensitive at times, absolutely missed the moment, missed what he was actually saying, caused him to think maybe I wasn't the safest person to go soft with. We were big into sports, and he was very, very good at sports. Most of that stuff came naturally to him. And he excelled at it, graduated black belt at 10 years old. And when he graduated from a 6-degree school, meaning the master of the dojang of the Taekwondo school, the academy, was a 6-degree black belt. And it takes a long time. So that's a highly credible school. And when he graduated from his black belt test, every instructor wanted to give him outstanding in everything. And their bylaws in this academy was that you've got to pick different people to be outstanding in the various categories. But he did get outstanding overall. I say that so you understand that here's a kid that before the hormones hit, right, is doing great, and maybe that's the story of many of you. And then all of a sudden, life gets very confusing. And all of a sudden, his parents aren't the greatest in the world. I love that Eminem lyric. You frickin' do-gooders, too bad you couldn't do too good as parents. I'll own that. I will also say none of us come, and life doesn't even come with an instruction manual, monkey see, monkey do. I tried hard to give my kid, the different circumstances than what I got, and in many ways ended up copying the same stuff. So I get it. But what I want to say is, when we look at the top of the list, what we want to cover is, let's pick this apart a little bit. Affordability is top of the list. Climate change is next. So let's just jump to climate change real quick. So the adult world, a big portion of it, is just beating this drum of impending doom, just constantly beating the drum that we are going to cause the earth to flood, to overheat, to be no more fun. Like, everyone's going to be living in Phoenix, Arizona, 12 months out of the year. Like in the summer when it's 120 degrees out, Death Valley. That will kill the wildlife, the pollution. We're going to make this planet extremely difficult to enjoy being here. And it's already difficult if you're a Gen Zer to enjoy being here. Which means it's also probably difficult for your parents too, because they love you, even if they're doing a terrible job of showing it, aren't available. They want to. There's pressures on them that have never been put on humanity before. And it's the same as yours. It's just, I want to talk to you today about the messaging I'm understanding you're getting. You're getting that the titans of the planet, the adults, the 30, 40, and obviously the gray-hairs, they seem to be running the governments around the country, around the planet, that they are just beating this drum that someday soon will pass a tipping point and we'll never get to have the peaceful climate that we were used to for whatever, all the years, thousands, tens of thousands of years. And subconsciously, I would think, if I was young and hearing this, and I check in with myself, and this is what I'm hearing, is all of the adults on the planet have no solution. They have no solution. In fact, it's just, the argument seems to land, and the conservatives say it's not happening, and the liberals, Democrats say that it is. And, all around the world, the liberal side says that we're killing the planet, and it seems to me that the conservative side says the data is flawed. We aren't large enough to have that kind of impact on a planet. That the planet's going to take care of itself. This stuff's normal. Now, I have read some reports that variances in the sun's, radiation output can absolutely be weakening, strengthening. I've read a report that says we will actually cool down a few degrees over the next decade, which would literally cause, where farming happens, certainly in our country, probably most of the world where it's happening now, to end on the northern edge of where farming is today. That all that would stop because the climate would actually cool, and you wouldn't be able to do the farming, you wouldn't be able to get the output you're used to getting from those northern, and I know it's hard to think of the southern hemisphere as ever cold, but the southernest edge of farming, northernest edge of farming, northern hemisphere, that would also cause a migration closer to the equator. An interesting fact, up the west coast of Africa comes this warm weather stream of air and water, right? And then it crosses the Atlantic and it smashes into the Gulf of Mexico, Cuba, and Florida area. And then it jets up the east coast of North America and goes back across the Atlantic and hits Europe. And you look at how many people, 410 million people or so live in Europe. How many people live in Canada? They're the same distance from the equator. Same distance. So just imagine if all those people just didn't go as far north, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and then certainly Germany and France and England. What happens if they didn't like it that cold that far north, right? If they were getting the same weather as Canada and they were living in the Middle East. Now just imagine if, belief systems and the way things were happening was all the same, the world would just be different. Not making an argument for or against anything, it would just be different. So if you just look at these little nuances to how the planet works. I also understand that the ice melting from the North Pole takes 2,000 years to snake around the Earth. Obviously, cold water is heavier than warm water, so as it sinks, it drives the current belt all around the planet. And it takes 2,000 years for that melted water at the North Pole to get back to the North Pole. And that's amazing. And I like these little points, in fact, because they draw us to a place where we need to remember how magical we actually are. We're magical. But I understand the drudgery and the hell and the pressure and the futile feelings you might have. Because look, man, oak trees don't grow in planter boxes. That's not where an oak tree can flourish, in some little 5-gallon planter bucket. An oak tree, 100 feet tall, right, can live a couple hundred years. It's gonna, the ones that I grew up with in the front of my house, a couple of them easily would take 2 or 3 people to hug the whole circumference of the tree. So we're oaks. We're oaks. We start off as, acorns, but we grow to oaks. Every human being has the same makeup inside of it, right? So if we also step back and said, remember, we want to keep sources. Hopefully I'm not jumping around too much. We want to keep sources as the whole, that's where we're angling for. We look down a gun scope. Probably shouldn't use that one. If we're just looking at the target of our efforts, we want to keep the source as what we're staring at. And we can see some other stuff on the side and discuss it, but we're always locked in to the source. And when we look at how humans are doing today, and we look at how humans have generally, just in every category, made life technologically, I don't want to go crazy with the tech, the touchscreen, Instagram, all just glued to a false reality, someone else's false reality. I don't think that's living. But I get that that's where we are today. But what I mean is, we used to, when the combustion engine was invented, Henry Ford, got that going with the assembly line, the Model A, Model T, and those things used to break down a lot. In the 80s, when America switched from making humongous beast vehicles to compete with Toyota and Honda, they were making fuel-efficient cars. Their cars never broke down. So I had a couple vehicles made in the 80s, and they were junk. They broke down all the time. These days, does cars break down? Generally, the only time I see a fairly, modern vehicle, 10, 15 years or not too much older than that, on the side of the road, it's got a flat tire, or maybe it ran out of gas. But it hasn't broken down. So my point is that we are very good at rubbing out the issues from stuff, right? And making stuff run smooth. Then why is society going a different way? Why is the experience of humanity on a southbound worsening trajectory when we generally, just the dynamic, creative, powerful influences of the human being itself is going to see the issues and make it better. It's going to see how it can make things better. And that also creates teamwork and competition, which is all good because when we're challenged, we can create. Necessity is the mother of all invention. So how could the youth be doing worse than, a few generations ago? I think my generation's a great measurement because I was born in 70. So I'm coming in breathing oxygen, just as the world is actually changing horrendously, fundamentally, for a long time. And it's been 54 years now, 55 years almost. And that changes, well, it's talked about in my book, 1971. But the change is that, we could at times have a terrible king. All she wants to do is make war, constantly giving up our youth to these dumb battles, right? And all of our wealth. And the king's people come by and they take half our cows because they need that to supply the troops. And so we have this burden. Society, humanity has this burden on us. Well, it's temporary, because then the king goes away and a peaceful king comes in. Or we have a drought, or we have a flood, or we have a plague. Plagues might last 7 years. Those go away. They're temporary. So what is it if we chart the health, wealth, and happiness of the generations in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and 2000s, 2010s, and today? If we just slice that up, we've got something that's worsening. Now, here's where we can just get clarity on this one. It's either, sadly, nature is just making inferior copies of human beings in the womb. That when that backseat magic occurs and life is starting, that the DNA assembly system and all that, how the human comes to being from 2 cells to a baby, that it's just messed up. It's the fluoride, it's the stress, it's whatever, we drink too much, it's whatever it is. Some chemical, it's this crap in our food, which is why Ozempic and tirzepatide is extremely popular. Wegovy, what I understand about those is they're peptides. Our body makes peptides, but our body's peptide making system does not have the horsepower to overcome the horrific crap the food industry uses to create the food that we buy today, which is insulin resistant. And so so you don't have to feel bad if you're pinching a little belly fat and sticking yourself once a week with peptides that then gives our body the horsepower, peptide delivery horsepower, to overcome this insulin resistant concrete junk that all we can pick from today. Beyond GMO, it's just all the crazy chemicals in it that's either there to make it have a more attractive texture, taste better, hold its consistency longer, whatever it is, right? It's just, food's a product now. It's just not food anymore. And so you look around, if we took those same time slices, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? You look at pictures of beach, any beach, all around the country. In the 70s, you hardly see any overweight people. Like, ask yourself, if we're from nature and we eat nature, and, we're not like eating 6 Big Macs a day. Don't even know if that's really bad for you back in the day. I used to eat 2 Big Macs. It was my favorite burger, man. I would probably beg my parents. I'm sure I probably ate McDonald's 3 or 4 times a week. Absolutely love Big Mac. I wasn't a fat kid. I didn't put on weight. The Big Mac back then would have been made from real food. The cows wouldn't have been screwed with. The grain they ate wasn't GMO. I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but I'm upset because the world we live in today is not the world we grew up living in. And it changed because of the government. It changed because they pay their bills with money out of thin air. You can't make cotton candy out of thin air. Someone's got to grow the sugar cane in Brazil, and they had to eat stuff while they were waiting for the sugar cane to grow. And they had to harvest it. Diesel was needed to get it to some plane or a boat, to get it to America, to get it to some factory where they would refine it and turn it into little packets that some guy at a circus went and bought the machine. They had to make the machine out of metal that spins the cotton candy, the sugar, into these little threads, these magical threads. And it looks like air, but look how much there, right there, just went into making sugar, which then also was needing this machine, and the guy transporting it, and whatever factory made the cotton candy mixing machine. Think of everything that went into that so you could have a piece of cardboard with cotton candy spun up on it. You can't make cotton candy out of thin air. If you're making your money out of thin air, you have a false reality, and that's what's causing holy hell for everyone on earth today, mostly everyone. And I'm sickened to death that 94% of young kids between 14 and 28 are looking at a most just abysmal planet to live on. It's overheating. It's going to die. Can't afford where we're going to live. Spending 50, 60% of my income, paltry income when you're young, right, on your rent. Then you got all these other bills. So if you want to feel autonomous, remember how you felt when you were 16, or at least most of you, hopefully, and you got this little piece of plastic, and now you had a passport to go wherever the hell you wanted, when you wanted to, as long as you didn't get grounded and your car taken from you, or your parents took your license. Maybe you didn't have a car. Maybe you got to drive others, but when you just think about that, I remember I was in trouble, so I didn't get my license until I was 17. I was grounded for a year. Nothing serious. I don't know. Whatever. Ask my parents. But when we think about what gets exciting as we get older and recess ends, right, in 6th grade in most schools, at least in mine, and then all of a sudden, it's more serious, school's 7th grade, and you're not going to be anything unless you get to some great school. You better get straight at Jesus. Today, you better have a 4.5 GPA. I don't even know how that's possible. Back then, if you had a 4.0, you'd go anywhere you wanted when I was a kid. And also, just so you understand, no, I didn't go to college. I had a tough time. Some say I'm smart. I can figure stuff out, probably because I had a really tough time. So the only reason I'm still breathing today is I figured stuff out. Maybe there was many points in my life where if I couldn't figure it out, I would have, done myself in. And I'm not saying that so anyone feels for me, I'm just saying this so you hear I can relate to you, man, because the number one thing that we've got to have is allies. We got to have allies. We got to understand that, the pressure and the hell may not stop. We'll get to that in a second, but it may not stop. But if I at least have an ally in it with me, we'll get through it. Or we'll at least muddle through. We'll be okay. We may not be experiencing what we thought we were going to or what we should have gotten to because the government is interfering with our ability to access that ease of living. Just F them. It's been going on for decades. Those look, there's two core challenges to being human, in my opinion. One is the mind that creates the problem cannot possess the solution. And self can't see self. Those two things right there make it tough. They make it tough. And if you give the authority, ultimate authority, to some group of people, I don't care what country you're in, which one? Which country? Let's pull them all. It's just like stoked. They're throwing parades every time we go from like winter to spring. They throw a parade. Spring to summer, throw a parade. Summer to fall, they throw a parade for their government. They're just bent out of shape on how incredible it is to live in that country. Where is that happening? Nowhere. It's happening nowhere. It's happening nowhere. So what does that say? No one's happy with their government. The government suck at managing life systems, evidenced by the fact that 94% of our kids in America, our sons and daughters, are really struggling today. What is causing that? It's not because there's some inferior copy that came out of the womb. That breaks my heart that the adults on the planet thinking they're running stuff, babbling on TV with their stupid ideas. The stupid government is shut down today because these morons have no clue why they're in D.C. They're there to represent what we want, what we can't do for ourselves because I've got my job and you've got yours. So they have a job where they do jobs for us that we don't have time to do. I don't have time to go fly to D.C. and have a meeting with 400 other Congress people. So we elect people to go do that for us and they can stay there and have their little meetings. But these ideas of stupidity, like New York wants to tax people for driving to work in this city. Man, I'm sorry I've lost it here. Hopefully I didn't blow your speakers out. But come on. So this is where we've got to switch gears. I said today is 27 years of living differently. And part of that code, the freedom, I've been working with someone for a long time since, I didn't know. So I check in with someone who does. And I've checked in with her Her name is Stacy. Love her to death. It just wouldn't have anything to offer you today without her. Couple of things, but she's the main thing. We have to recognize what we control and what we don't. And the first thing we have to have before we even start doing that assessment, yes, it's that, it's a pretty word. It's called serenity. We have to have that first. So can we control what the hell's... Obviously not, because every government's the same. There aren't any parades being thrown, so we're not going to change what's going on there. Not like today, and not with a vote that's coming up next year in November. It's not. And even if it was, that's happening in November. So we need to come into the moment right now where you're suffering and struggling. First of all, it isn't your fault. It's not your fault. You aren't doing it wrong. You are literally, the government is, so you're trying to swim and the government is literally pushing down on your head, causing you to drown. Literally. And all the systems that come amongst that. And then all the blame and judgment and the self-loathing that comes with, why can't I swim? I see others swim. I saw my parents swim. My grandparents swam fine. Why can't I swim? What's wrong with me? So first thing I have to tell you is there's nothing wrong with you. Nothing. Now, you may have been told there's chemical bounces and stuff like that. I'm not getting into, I don't have a license. I'm just trying to say some stuff that maybe others aren't saying. You can hear that other stuff from people trained to say it because they have degrees in it. But if you are taking supplements, something you need, something that a doctor's been told, then we're not going to feel bad about that. I take 20 things in the morning, like vitamins and all these, stuff, ancient male Roman mineral stuff, that the ancient Romans would have taken to conquer the world, all kinds of stuff. And I'm over 50, so there's a few things, that I need to keep refrigerated. So I don't feel bad about that. Why? I can be like, oh, it doesn't happen to everyone, but it's happening to me. That's not going to do any good for me. That's not going to do any good for you. Affordability, climate change, gun violence, discrimination. One thing we can control. I implore you, and you might need to dig down to the last 3 or 4% of what you've got left. But your attitude. For you first. Don't take care of anyone else's feelings. You take care of you. I don't see anyone doing a great job at taking care of yours. You take care of you. And you reach down deep and you start looking that maybe you can bring 20% of a great attitude today, then you bring that 20%. Or maybe it's 45%. Maybe it's 90%. And maybe tomorrow or 3 days from now, it's 17%. And whatever you've got, the best, all you've got, you bring it. Whatever it is, to the day. And it's not singing yourself some song that everything's going to be fine because you woke up and the sun rose. You're aware. And I'm telling you that this humanity, over the last 54 years, since Richard Nixon, President Nixon, one of our adult leaders, looking out for the people, fucking Constitution, we got a blueprint. A lot of people died so that damn thing could be written. That's what the flag represents. That he betrayed that, and I don't know how many have since him. And I don't know how many have before him, but I know George Washington didn't, and Ben Franklin didn't, and Thomas Jefferson didn't. And we can start going down the line. We all have built-in forgetters. And, each, 25 years or so, we get further away from 1776. And this message isn't about being a patriot. It's about a line in the sand where humanity finally had the courage to say F you to the kings and the monarchies and socialism and any stupid organization that was going to tell you how to live. That's what 1776 represents. For all of the humanity, to be an example. I've said it before, the reason Cuba is still communist, that's one hell of a piece of real estate floating around on the earth. They're still communists because there aren't enough people with enough courage to lay down their lives today for freedom to follow the lives behind them. The people will always overwhelm the military in numbers. And Americans overwhelmed the greatest military on the earth with the British Navy and Army. Because this is what I want to recognize, same stuff that's in you. The copper flowing through your veins is the same at the center of this planet, causing a magnetic field to protect us from the sun. What can we use that protects us from what the government is doing? The first thing you can do is not be thinking that you're at fault, like blame, it's a lot, just that you're inferior, that somehow you're just a poor copy of human being. You're not. You're not. And then we start looking at what we control. We don't control the government. We don't control their choices. So what do we control? If we're still living at home, our name's not on the deed. So, in many homes, you're not going to get to say what goes off inside the walls, right? Because your name's not on the deed. Are we going to go to college? Long ago, when the inflation started caused by the government, which has averaged 8% a year since the year 2000, measured by just how much commodity prices have gone up, which is the simplest way for us to understand how far is my money going. Because if my money grew at 2% and inflation was 10%, then it's 8%, right? Like just simple stuff. Are the choices they're making good for us or bad? So they're really bad if both parents have to work and they're stressed out all the time, and every time they bump their knee in the dark, it hurts like hell, and they end up kind of scary people sometimes. They're trying to enjoy their time on the planet as well as be a parent to you. That it's not fair to them, that they just can never be at peace, that 70% of this country is wondering what bills to pay late this month. That to try and make it enjoyable, human beings in this country have racked up $1 trillion in credit card debt. At an average rate, I'll probably get this wrong, look it up, but it's somewhere near 20% interest. Boy, corporate America is feasting off the misery of the American worker, the American individual, and the kids. So as the bills mount, look, if your parents had a year's worth of money saved, they were like, hey, we're going to buy a boat and sail around the world and you're going to be homeschooled for a year. If they could go do that, they probably have peace of mind. And if you have parents that have that, count yourself lucky. Most don't today. And it's because of the government. When the government says, oh my God, we have $7 trillion in bills and $5 trillion in cash, they print the $2 trillion, which causes the costs of your commodities to go up. But your earnings don't go up. Your parents' earnings don't go up at the same pace, or I wouldn't be talking about this, and you wouldn't probably be as stressed out. Mathematically, there would eventually be a tough period of time because everything has a limit to it. Everything's based off resources. So when we look at what we control, we could start, because I think anxiety must have uncertainty to come from, to exist. So let's get out some tools that kill uncertainty. The uncertainty that we can kill. And maybe we can move away from stuff that we can't control. I've just given you this an example. I say it on almost every show. Tennessee has the best. And then your mind might slam shut, like, I'm living in the city, I can have whatever I want, bars are open until 4 a.m, all this cool stuff to do. Great, are you happy? Is it getting better? Are those 15% raises happening for you every year? Tennessee has the best ratio of what you'll earn to what you'll pay for cost of living. The best ratio in the country, by far. There's like 5 states. Arkansas is one of them. Tennessee, I mean, I've driven through Tennessee a whole bunch. But I've been to Memphis a lot. I spent a few years living in Arkansas when I was in the Air Force. Humid in the summer. Interesting place. Very smart people, by the way. Some companies that started out at Walmart, Tyson Foods, J.B. Hunt Trucking. There's brilliance in Arkansas. I think it's the second largest rice producing entity in the world, right after Asia. But if we have that open mind, we could start to go, okay, where's the Lewis and Clark inside of me? I had never been across the country before. They were lost the whole time. They were lost. They just documented where they went, and they drew that map. So the Lewis and Clark inside of you feel lost. Great, let's find a compass. It starts with, let's nail down the things we can decide on, and let's put the things we can't over here. Because we can't do anything about them. But what can we change? Well, we can adjust where we live, just like the colonists did when they came across the Atlantic, when they didn't want to live under the stupid government influence and all the problems that was created for them over there in Europe, they came over here. They'd heard about a land. Now, the land had nothing much that they wanted. Didn't have any cities, I don't know, there wasn't electricity back then, but, it didn't have services. It didn't have doctors. It didn't have bankers. It didn't have, blacksmith and stuff for horses. It didn't have teachers in schools, right? Didn't have, stuff. Didn't have any of that stuff when they came to America. You might be thinking Tennessee may not have stuff. It has 3 pretty big cities. Memphis, Knoxville, Nashville. Yeah, 3 big cities. I know Trump's sending cops into Memphis. Another subject. My point is, if all you're facing is constant resistance, you might need to change your direction. You are not an inferior copy of human. You might be a better copy of human. That might be happening. I mean, we invent a lot more stuff. There's a lot more creativity. I think the generations today are a lot more creative than maybe what we used to be. We used to live in this regimented, I don't know. There was a lot more societal pressures on, the young when I was growing up that are gone today. I mean, there's still counties in this country where dancing is illegal. There's still counties in this country where booze is illegal. So it's kind of stupid because you just do, in Arkansas, you just drive over to the other county where it's legal and then you just drive home. It's just, whatever. How do you get away from this stupid leadership, these people, these adults that are just freaking inept at making good, have totally lost who they freaking work for? How do you change how it's going? So I sometimes think life is a little bit like, if you've ever been skiing or snowboarding, it's a little bit like catching that chairlift. You gotta wiggle in, it's coming, you're about to be out of time, don't get this wrong, right? And sometimes people get it wrong, and they spill out, and it's just a big mess, and they stop the chairlift, and they wait for you to get yourself collected, and then you sit your butt in the seat, and they fire it up again, and everyone starts going, right? So, you're looking behind you a little bit, but look, the windshield's this big, rear view's this big. We just want to glance in the rear view. We want to be looking out the windshield. We want to be looking forward. We need to look back a little bit, see how we're in alignment with how we're headed. But we need to be going forward. If we're stuck, then we got to get moving. This is your time on the planet. You are literally a space traveler hurtling through space. You Google that little astronaut moon buggy video of some astronaut driving a golf cart on the moon. Next time you get in a vehicle, remember that same thing is happening to you. You're literally in a moon buggy on a planet. This is your 80 years. This is your time. And this is your time to recognize that there are forces coming against humanity that have never happened before. But if you start to become aware, I think you have a better shot. Because I can tell you, the same guy that invented, the assembly line, and Henry Ford, and put a man on the moon, and Kennedy saying, let's get it done by the end of the decade, and all that stuff is in you. That Michael Jordan flying from the top of the key with his tongue out is in you. It's all in you, all the same. We just have to start looking, and we have to slice off what we don't control. Here's how fear cost me something very dear that still bothers me today. Growing up, BB gun wars, setting stuff on fire. We used to take big 250-volt light bulbs and glass cutter, cut the glass free of the filament, and then fill it full of gasoline and screw it into an electrical cord. It was like 300 foot, and we had 10 of them. My buddy Bruce's house. And we'd have it out in the center of this cul-de-sac where they were very slow at building this neighborhood, and flip the switch and boom! So we used to do all kinds of funny stuff. Camping all the time, canoe trips where, you're camping on the shore, 3-4 nights, Shenandoah, Northeast, Potomac, that kind of stuff, right? And so my whole life as a kid, I'm thinking I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. That's what I'm gonna do. I wanna be a Navy SEAL. They're the best of the best of the best. They go through holy hell to end up with that badge, right? To me, the hardest piece of metal you could ever put on your chest is that of a Navy SEAL. And so I signed up with the Navy, and I'm down in Norfolk, and the recruiter up where I'm from, he said, you're gonna get 160 grand for college. I was 23 at the time, so I'm right on the cusp of when people are graduating. And I had a landscape business and some other things before, headed down to Norfolk. Finally do the deal, and you can't sign up to be a SEAL. You have to just go in the Navy and hope people like you, and you apply and ask admirals to sign off on it or whatever, how it works. But people get there, so I knew I was gonna get there, and I never would have rung that bell. Never. And I wouldn't really care about college, but my fear triggered, Because it's scary when you're about to sign your kind of life away and you're right, you're about to become property of the military. And they told me at Norfolk I was only going to only get $80,000 for college. Well, my base human kicked in and I lost sight of my dreams. And all those years I spent as a kid doing evasion and capture of the flag and manhunts and all this stuff I'd been doing, survival schools I'd been doing, Indian guides, Boy Scouts, all that stuff just went out the window. And I threw a hissy fit and I didn't sign up. Now, eventually I went in the Air Force. I just wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I wanted my life to be freaking certain to have a purpose. And this is the last thing I'll end with. If that happens to you, you bounce off of that. You keep going. Rearview mirror's this big. Windshield's this big. This big. We only want to put in view what we don't want to hit. And we want to make sure we're headed in the direction that we're going in. If we're looking through this the whole time, you're going to be running into everything. So don't be looking in the past. The past is something that can teach you your experiences, mistakes. Be humble. It'll be teaching you on the direction you're picking that you're looking at through the windshield. But fear cost us. It cost me. And, this is the last piece I wanted to end with. Let's not spend so much damn effort focused on how long we're going to live. And believe me, we're not talking about ending anything like on our own. I'm just saying society used to be built. Special life was to cherish every moment of it. And if I were to pass on at 27 years old on a mission, my life was not cut short. My life was not cut short. My life was lived full up until 27 years old, had I gone out on a mission as a SEAL. But society these days just spends all of its time trying to pack years into the living. Years, numbers, time into the living. Why? Because we're so distracted. We can't get everything done. We can't get to the zesty part of life. We can't get to the part we cherish. That might come next year. Maybe if I get a college degree, then I'll get to the part where I cherish life. No, because now you're going to start life with a whole bunch of debt. And the government's still printing. So by the time you get out of that college trip, things are going to be even more expensive, but the payroll isn't going to be there to match it. College used to be a great way to offset the cost of living. You'd get a lot more salary than someone who just, left high school and went into the job field. You'd have a lot more higher earnings than them. But now you got to rack up so much debt because the colleges cost a lot. So they need you to borrow a lot to pay to go there. Plus, there's a lot of people just cramming in to go there because they're being led to think that the only way your earnings are going to get on top of your bills is if you have a college degree. And that's not the case. That's not true. So maybe we can just now take a break and say, I want to pack years into the living into the years, not the number of years into the living. I want high quality living in however many years I end up with. That's what we want. And if we change our perspective to that, a lot more stuff will start to come into view or come into alignment. And then maybe living in Tennessee is something you're down with. And you might get down with that this week. Maybe you can set up your life there. There's 3 big cities. And it may not have been on your radar. I'm not here in Tennessee. It's a very populated state. And there's others. My point is, we stay flexible. We bend in those stiff winds, right? But we need to be resolute. We need to recognize that oak trees don't grow in 5-gallon planter boxes. And if you feel constipated, you feel stressed, and you feel the mental challenges on your self-esteem, on your health, your mind's doing funny stuff, maybe we need to look at what the experience is, how we could change that, what we're giving our mind. Because if we're just hoping for someone else to deliver the change, not going to happen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.